be for 4.4. And so if you do your extension or in honors, 4.4 is solving systems of equations by substitution. So you've already done systems, solving them by graphing and finding where the points meet. What we're going to be doing today is actually a 9th grade topic, but it's taking it and substituting in. So instead of graphing it, we're going to find the ordered pair. We're going to find the x and y value by substituting something in. So this is the substitution method is a method solving systems of equations by substituting, where's my pen? There it is. By substituting equations within one another. So we're going to be putting them into each other. So our goal, first thing we need to do is solve one of the equations. So you're going to have two equations. You need to solve one of the equations for either the x or the y. It doesn't matter whether you solve for x or whether you solve for y, but you need to get one of them so that it says y equals this, or so that it says x equals this. Once you've done that, you're going to substitute. I have a lot of t's in there. The x or the y for which you solved. So if you solve for x, you're going to substitute that into the other equation. If you solve for y, you're going to substitute y into the other equation. So into the other equation and solve for the unknown variable. So once you get to this point, you should only have one variable that you're solving for either x or y. Now that you know the exact value for either x or y, now what we're going to do is we're going to plug that value in to one of the equations and solve for the other variable. And it sounds confusing, but once you get going, you'll do it. And you'll do this a lot in 9th grade, so you're getting an advantage. Write your answer as an ordered pair. So again, instead of graphing this, we're actually solving to get our ordered pair in the form of x, y. And then you can check your solution by replacing the x and y in each equation and making sure that it comes out correctly. All right, so this is what this means. So the first step says solve one of the equations for x or y. Well, both of these are solved for y. You'll notice that this says y equals 4x minus 1, and this one says y equals 2x minus 5. Well, if they both equal y, then they should be equal to each other. In all honesty, we have y equals y. We know that that's true. That means that this equation right here is equal to this equation right here. So we're going to take, excuse me, it doesn't matter which y value, but I'm going to take this right here, because this tells me that y equals 2x minus 5, and I'm going to put it in place of that y. So now this y is going to be 2x minus 5. And I'm going to set it equal to my other y, which was this one, which is 4x minus 1. And now I can solve the equation just like I've always done. So I'm going to solve for x. So I'm going to move my x's to one side. And I'm going to move, that will zero those out, and then I'm going to move my numbers to the other side. So I'll have negative 4 equals 2x. And then I can solve for x by dividing both sides by 2. That will leave me x equals negative 2. So this is my x value in my ordered pair. Now I need to solve for my y value. So that's where this one comes in. Now that you solved, and I know the exact value of x, I know my x is negative 2 now, I can plug my x value in here, or I can plug it in here. It doesn't matter. So I'm just going to take it. I'm going to take y equals 4x minus 1. We now know that x equals negative 2, so I'm going to replace that with x, and then I'm going to solve. So now I know y equals negative 9. And that would be my ordered pair. So now that we have that, we now know, like, if we were to graph these two lines, they would cross at -2, -9. So now we're going to do the same thing for the next one. So this one tells me y equals 6x, and this one says 2x plus 3y equals -20. Your goal is to get either x or y alone in one of the equations. Well, my y is already alone right here. So I know that this is what y equals. So since y equals 6x, I'm going to take that and replace it right there. So I'm going to have 2x plus 3. I'm going to replace y with 6x because this tells me y equals 6x equals -20. Then I'm going to take 2x plus, and then this together is going to give me 18x. That will equal -20. Combine my x's. So I have 20x equals -20. Last step is to divide by 20, giving me x equals -1. So now I have my x value. Now I need to find my y value. So now I'm going to take what I got for x, and I'm either going to plug it in right there, or I can plug it in there. I'm going to choose to do the shorter one because I know that x equals -1. So I'm just replacing that. So now I have y equals -6. And there's my solution. So again, if I were to graph these two lines, they would cross at -1, -6. Our next one, we need to solve so that one of our variables is alone. So this one says y equals -2 minus 2x. This one says 5x plus 3y equals -8. Well, this one's already solved for y. So I'm going to take this right here and replace it with y right there. So I'm going to have 5x plus 3. I replace this whole thing with y. So -2 minus 2x equals -8. 5x will stay. I got to distribute that through. So I'm going to have -6 minus 6x equals -8. Combine my like terms, which will leave me with a -x minus 6 equals -8. To get x alone, I'm going to add 6 to both sides, leaving me with -x equals -2. Then final step is divide by -1, which will leave me with x equals 2. Now that I know x equals 2, I can plug it back in. I know that this equation looks like this. So I'm going to replace x, which we now know is 2. I'm going to replace it with this right here. So this is why it's called substitute, because we just plug in what we know into the variable. So -2, and then -2 times 2 is -4, leaving me with y equals -6. So this is saying this is where these two lines, if we were to graph them, they would cross right there. All right, I'm going to go over these two with you, and then you can try these last two on your own. All right, so these ones are these last two are just a tiny bit different than what we've been doing because neither one of them have been solved. Like this one, our y's were alone. This one, y was alone. This one, our y was already alone. So this one, we have to solve one of them so that our variable's alone. I personally am going to choose to solve this one right here because y is already, has nothing attached to it. So the only thing I have to do is subtract this 2x. So now I'll have y equals 9 minus 2x. So now I can very easily plug it in and go from there because now I have a y equals. So I have officially solved for either my x or y. Now that I know this is what y equals, I'm going to replace it with this y right there. So I'm going to have 2x minus 3, replacing my y with what we said y equals. And this is 9 minus 2x equals -11. 2x stays. I distribute that through, leaving me with -27. -3 times -2 is -6x equals -11. Combine my x's, which will leave me with, oh, this should be positive. Negative times negative is positive. So we should have 8x minus 27 equals -11. I add 27 to both sides, leaving me with 8x equals 16. Divide by 8 to get x all by itself. I now know that my x value is 2. Now that I know x is 2, I'm going to plug it in. It doesn't matter whether I plug it into this one or I plug it into this one. I need to solve for y now. So I'm just going to plug it into this top one. Nope, I'm going to plug in this bottom one. I think it'll be easier. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to say 2x plus y equals 9. Well, I know that x is 2, so now I'm going to go 2 times 2 plus whatever y is equals 9. So 4 plus y equals 9. Subtracting 4 from both sides, y equals 5. So again, that's where those would cross if we were to graph them. All right, the last one I'm going to do with you, and then you need to work on 6 and 7 on your own. Again, I need to solve for either x or y. Well, neither one of these says x equals this or y equals this. They both have them on the same side. You'll notice, and this is not always the case, but again, I'm introducing this to you. You'll do a lot more of it in 9th grade. What I'm going to do, since x is by itself, there's nothing attached to it, I'm going to solve for this one right here. So I have x plus 4y equals 0. Well, if I subtract 4y's, this tells me 4y's that x is equal to a negative 4y. So now I've taken this one and solved it for x. So now I can take this value and plug it in to that x right there. So I'm going to do 3 times negative 4y plus 2y equals 20. This will give me negative 12y. And then and then plus 2y equals 20. So then I'm going to have 10 y's that are negative equal to 20. I divide by negative 10. I now know that my y value is equal to a negative 2. So when I write this one, I know that this value is negative 2. Usually we solve for x every time first, but I now know that my y value is negative 2. Now knowing that y equals negative 2, I'm going to plug it back in. It doesn't matter to which one. I'm just going to plug mine into right here. So x plus 4y equals 0. I know that x is what I'm solving for, and I know that y is negative 2. So now I know that x minus 8 equals 0. I'm going to add 8 to both sides so I can get x alone, leaving me with x equals 8. So there's my ordered pair. All right, give 6 and 7 a try.